Hey guys, my name's Ashley Seifer, and I'm a preschool instructional coach and teacher in Central Iowa. I'm also a graduate student at Morningside College. The title of my study is The Effect of Using Jolly Phonics on Letter Sound Scores in a Preschool Classroom of 4-year-old Student. Problem statement. So since No Child Left Behind, kindergarten standards have increased due to the standards movement of Common Core. So within the past decade, kindergarten standards have gotten more academically rigorous and demanding. Kindergarten used to be more play-based, and now it's more academic-based. So kindergarten teachers are reporting that some students are entering kindergarten below grade level in the area of literacy. Specifically, students are leaving preschool without a strong foundation in letter sounds. If students enter below grade level, then they might be at risk of academic failure. Furthermore, if an intervention is not put into place right away, that student could potentially be receiving instruction above level for an extended period of time, which would then cause them to be even further behind. So why did I choose this study? I chose this topic to research because when I conducted the study, my school district directed us to use a visual phonics program of our choice, and I wanted to check the validity of Jolly Phonics. I also was using Petchy Phonics in the past, and I wanted to switch to Jolly Phonics due to the amount of teacher and parent resources that I found it offered. Literature review. So like I said before No Child Left Behind and the Common Core State Standards movement, kindergarten was more play-based, and now since these movements have happened within the past decade, kindergarten is more academic-focused in order to provide instruction linked to Common Core State Standards. No Child Left Behind legislation required that children need to read fluently by the end of 3rd grade. In order to keep up with this expectation, the Common Core State Standards have increased in the early elementary grades in the area of literacy. Due to this has caused there to be a lot of pressure put on preschool teachers in order to prepare students for literacy standards in kindergarten. So I'm going to go over some of the past interventions for teaching letter sounds. The first one is called Letter of the Week. So there's been research done that claims that Letter of the Week is out of style in terms of teaching letter sounds. This is where a teacher focuses solely on one letter for 5 instructional days. This method is obsolete and out of date because it takes the teacher 26 instructional weeks in order to get through one cycle of the alphabet. So with that said, this means that students are exposed to the 26 letters of the alphabet only 1 to 2 times during the whole school year. The second intervention is called See the Sound Visual Phonics. So there was a case study done by Gardner where it was done on 6 at-risk kindergartners, and they were taught See the Sound Visual Phonics for 5 months as a Tier 2 supplemental intervention. So the students were instructed and tested in the areas of beginning sounds and letter names. All of the participants had been taught beginning sounds and letter names previously through the core curriculum, but they fell out and needed some Tier 2 supplemental interventions. After the 5-month intervention was over, it was found that all of the participants raised their letter sound scores, and some of the students learned 8 to 9 more sounds during the 5-month period. The third one is called Visual Phonics for Students with Special Needs. So this was a case study done by Smith and Wang that studied a 4-year-old student who was deaf and had a cochlear implant. So the student could not really hear much. The student was taught visual phonics and Fountas and Pinnell kindergarten phonics curriculum. A key feature of this visual phonics program is that it allows students to manipulate phonemes without actually having to hear. So the hand actions imitate the articulation features of how sounds are produced, and this allows students to be able to visualize sounds. After a 6-week intervention, the students' phonological awareness and speech production increased substantially. The last intervention I'm going to tell you about is Jolly Phonics. This one's similar to See the Sound Visual Phonics. It's a visual phonics program that involves visual, auditory, and kinesthetic modes of learning in order for students to effectively learn the alphabet. So it also uses hand actions for each letter sound. There's a case study written by a kindergarten teacher named Annette Steele and she was using Jolly Phonics to teach her students letter sounds and phonics, and she claimed that at the end of the school year, almost all of the students were reading above grade level. Additionally, she stated in the study that the students were able to use the knowledge they learned from Jolly Phonics in order to apply it to their writing independently. So, a gap in the research. So there have been studies done on the effect of using Jolly Phonics with early elementary grade levels, but there's not studies done on 4-year-old preschool classrooms. So my research question is, will teaching one Jolly Phonics letter a day increase the amount of letter sounds preschoolers know after a 14-week intervention? The purpose of my study. The purpose of the study was to determine the impact of using a visual phonics program named Jolly Phonics as a letter sounds intervention on 4-year-old preschool students, and also to see if this is an effective tool to prepare students for kindergarten literacy standards. My hypothesis was that teaching Jolly Phonics would increase the letter sound scores of 4-year-old preschool students after a 14-week intervention. My independent variable was using a visual phonics system named Jolly Phonics in order to teach letter sounds, and my dependent variable was letter sound scores of the 4-year-old preschool students. So what possible impact could this study have on my district or myself? So the results of the study can be used to help preschool teachers and administrators make instructional decisions about letter sounds instruction in the future. Also, my work as a teacher will be impacted by whether or not I continue to keep using Jolly Phonics as a letter sounds intervention in my classroom. So as for my methods, the research design that I used was a quasi-experimental design. It took place in the 2018-19 school year in a public district in central Iowa. As for my participants, I had 15 students total who were all in the same 4-year-old preschool class, which lasted 2.5 hours a day for 4 days a week. 8 of the students were male and 7 were female. 14 students were Caucasian and 1 student is Hispanic. All of the students spoke English, although one of the students also spoke Spanish at home. None of the students were on an individualized education program or an IEP, and no incentives were given, but the parents were informed of the study. So the materials that I used were the Jolly Phonics flashcards, hand actions, and jingles, the Teaching Strategies Gold Assessment, the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet to track student data, and the letter sound assessment sheets with uppercase letters only. So this is a visual of the Jolly Phonics flashcards that I use. Each time I do a Jolly Phonics lesson, I always use the same card, so that way the students are always connecting the letter sound to that visual. Here's an example of some of the hand actions that pair with each of the letters. So for example, S says S, and A says ah, ah, ah. So each letter has a certain hand action that pairs with it. This is also the teaching order that Jolly Phonics recommends, so this is the one that I used during my teaching. So as for my procedure, the baseline period was the first 7 days of school. This is where the students didn't receive any instruction on letter sounds, and I was just collecting data on which letter sounds the students knew. I only used uppercase letters. Each student was assessed individually in an area with no distractions. The assessment sheet that I used showed 5 letters at a time, and I pointed to each letter and said, "What sound does this letter make?" If the student did not respond after 30 seconds, then the letter sound was scored incorrect. The data was entered 3 times into Gold and also into the Excel spreadsheet. So as for the treatment period, on day 8, the Jolly Phonics instruction began. So I taught 1 letter sound paired with a hand action and jingle every day. It was done at whole group instruction for 3 to 5 minutes approximately. The Jolly Phonics teaching order was used, and the following routine was followed during my lessons. So first I would present the letter and name. Second, I would teach the letter sound paired with the hand action. Third, the students would practice the hand action and letter sound. Then I would play the corresponding Jollyphonics jingle on the iPad. So each letter sound also has a little jingle or a song that goes with it. After that, I would sing the jingle and do the Jollyphonics hand action while holding up the letter, and the students would sing along and copy the hand action. I would actually play the song twice, so the first time around they would watch me, second time they would join in. So for my data analysis, the baseline data was collected during the first 7 days of school, treatment data was collected during the 7th week of the intervention, and the post-test data was collected during the 14th and final week of the intervention. A dependent sample t-test was used to analyze the data. So the reliability and validity of the GOLD assessment was tested with a teacher and rater reliability test and also with a RASH rating scale model. So as for my results, like I said, a dependent sample t-test was used to compare the baseline treatment and post-test data. An alpha level of 0.05 was used for all of these statistical tests. So for the first test, between baseline and treatment, it did show a statistically significant difference. On average, the students scored higher on the treatment with a mean of 5 and a standard deviation of 7.46. For the second test, treatment to post-treatment, this had moderate effect size and it did not indicate a significant difference. The mean was 10.06 and standard deviation was 7.65. Baseline to post-treatment tests indicated a statistically significant difference with a very large effect. So on average, students scored higher on the post-test data with a mean of 11.99 and standard deviation of 8.14. So overall, the results confirmed that the hypothesis was supported. So this is a table that shows the data that I just described, and then this is a figure that shows exactly how many letter scores each of the participants gained throughout the intervention. So my connection to past research, so like I said, kindergarten teachers reported in the past that kindergartners score below benchmark in the area of letter sounds at the beginning of the school year. So with this said, the study proves to be an effective intervention for teaching letter sounds to preschoolers to help them be prepared for kindergarten literacy standards. My study is focused on the phonics methodology, specifically using visual phonics. So the students were reinforced each time they learned a letter sound and hand action. So B.F. Skinner's work is rooted from operant conditioning, where a behavior will be repeated if the individual receives positive reaction. So each time my students learned a letter sound and produced the correct hand action, they were given positive praise, and each time they did not produce the correct hand action, they got a negative reaction. So the implications for my study, teachers can use the hand actions across all subjects. They can use the hand actions to prompt students as they're writing or as they're sounding out words. So instead of giving them the letter sound, they can just give them the hand action and let them figure out the letter sound themselves. This research study provides evidence to teachers and administrators as an effective intervention for teaching letter sounds in preschool. This intervention can easily be fit into a half-day preschool program or an all-day preschool program. It can be used across multiple grade levels and with students with special needs. The students are able to apply their learning during other activities of the day, such as writing. And Jollyphonics is a common language, so teachers are able to share the resources with parents at home. So the limitations to my study was that it was short, it was only 14 weeks long. The sample size was small, with only 15 students. The preschool class was only a half-day program. It's unknown whether the students were exposed to visual phonics at home, the level of parental involvement, and the student motivation to learn letter sounds could affect the data. Recommendations for future research are to extend the length of the study, have a larger sample size, do the study in a full-day preschool classroom, measure if the students had visual phonics exposure, and to use a control and experimental group. So in conclusion, the findings suggest that teaching letter sounds through Jollyphonics increased 4-year-old preschool student letter sound scores.